It had been 6 Earth months since Alex Vance had been assigned to the diplomatic mission to the Xylos Empire, and he still couldn't get used to the grandiosity of the Queen's command hall. The vaulted ceilings stretched at least 30 meters high, adorned with what appeared to be constellations rendered in some luminescent material that shifted subtly, as if tracking the actual stars outside. The walls curved organically, made of a pearlescent substance that was neither metal nor stone, cool to the touch, yet somehow radiating a faint warmth when approached. Alex straightened his Navy diplomatic uniform for the 3rd time in as many minutes, trying not to fidget under the stern gaze of the Xylosian royal guards. Their exoskeletons, a natural feature of their species, not armor as he'd initially thought, gleamed under the ambient light, shifting from deep violet to midnight blue, depending on the angle. "Stop touching your collar," whispered Senior Ambassador Harding, not bothering to look in Alex's direction. "You look like a cadet at his first inspection." "Sorry, sir," Alex muttered. As the junior linguistic liaison and cultural communication specialist, he was, technically speaking, supposed to remain silent unless directly addressed. But his nerves were getting the better of him, especially today when the trade negotiations had turned particularly tense. The doors at the far end of the hall parted silently, another marvel of Xylosian technology that operated with no visible mechanics, and Queen Thara entered. Alex had seen Her Majesty on several occasions over the past months, but each time was like the first. She stood over 7 feet tall, willowy yet powerful, with a commanding presence that seemed to draw all light in the room toward her. Her skin had the same pearlescent quality as the walls, though with undertones of lavender and azure that shifted with her movements. The crown she wore wasn't placed on her head, but seemed to grow from it, an elegant array of crystalline structures that resembled a neural network more than royal jewels. What always struck Alex the most, however, were her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and entirely black except for pinpricks of light that resembled stars. It was impossible to read her expressions through those cosmic eyes, yet they conveyed an intelligence so profound it bordered on intimidating. Representatives of Earth, Thara's voice was melodic but carried a distinct metallic undertone, the product of the translation matrix that converted her native Xylosian into English. "We have reviewed your latest proposal regarding mining rights in the Proxima system." Ambassador Harding straightened. "And what is your Majesty's assessment?" Thara's head tilted slightly, the Xylosian equivalent of a frown. "Inadequate. You offer 15% of extracted rare minerals in exchange for our protection and technology. The Xylos Empire finds this insufficient." Alex winced internally. The Earth Coalition had authorized up to 25%, but Harding was playing hardball, starting low. A strategy that might work with other species, but the Xylosians valued directness. What would the Queen consider adequate? Harding pressed. 30%, non-negotiable, Thara stated. Additionally, all mining operations must adhere to our ecological standards, which, I remind you, are significantly more stringent than Earth's. Harding's jaw clenched visibly. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, 30% would make the entire operation financially untenable for our corporations. Surely there's room for. The resources in question exist in our sovereign territory." Thara cut him off. "We do not need your corporations to extract them. This is a courtesy extended because of our interest in maintaining diplomatic relations with your species. A species that, may I remind you, has only achieved interstellar travel within the last century." The condescension in her tone was subtle but unmistakable, and Alex felt his face flush with embarrassment on behalf of humanity. The Xylos Empire had been traversing the stars for millennia before humans had even invented the wheel. "We understand the position of privilege from which we negotiate," Harding conceded, his diplomatic training keeping his tone even despite the obvious frustration. "However, I must insist that—" "You insist nothing." Thara's voice remained calm, but the pinpricks of light in her eyes flared briefly. "The Xylos Empire does not respond to insistence from junior species." The tension in the room crystallized. The other Earth diplomats shifted uncomfortably, and even the Xylosian court attendants seemed to grow more still, if that were possible. It was at this precise moment of maximum diplomatic awkwardness that Alex's brain decided to malfunction spectacularly. He had been mentally rehearsing various diplomatic phrases, trying to think of something, anything, that might ease the tension. In his nervousness, his thoughts had drifted briefly to his personal life, specifically to the message he'd been composing to his long-distance boyfriend back on Earth before being called to this meeting. The two threads of thought crossed in his mind at the worst possible moment, just as Tharia's gaze swept across the Earth delegation and landed, momentarily, on him. And somehow, inexplicably, the words, "I love you," escaped his lips. Not whispered, not mumbled, but articulated with perfect clarity in the acoustically precise chamber. Time seemed to stop. Alex felt the blood drain from his face as the full horror of what he'd just done crashed over him like a tidal wave. Ambassador Harding turned to him slowly, his expression transitioning from confusion to absolute mortification. The other Earth diplomats froze, eyes wide with shock. But it was the reaction of the Xylosian court that truly terrified Alex. The guards' exoskeletons shifted from blue to a vivid crimson, the color of alert. The attendants murmured among themselves in their clicking, crystalline language. And Queen Thara went perfectly still, her starlight eyes fixed directly on Alex with an intensity that made him want to sink through the floor and continue sinking until he reached Earth's core. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds. Then, slowly, deliberately, Thara rose from her throne and descended the 3 steps to the main floor level. She moved toward Alex with fluid grace, each step echoing in the silent chamber. The Earth delegation parted before her like the Red Sea, leaving Alex standing alone, paralyzed with terror. Thara stopped less than a meter from him, towering over his 5'11" frame. Up close, he could see intricate patterns within her pearlescent skin, like circuitry or perhaps writing in a language too complex for human eyes to decode. She leaned down slightly, those cosmic eyes now level with his own. Alex thought, somewhat hysterically, that if he was about to die, at least his last view would be spectacular. Then, in a voice so low that only he, and perhaps the closest diplomats, could hear, Thara whispered a single word. Finally, before Alex could process this, she straightened and addressed the court in a normal volume. "These negotiations are suspended for today. I require private consultation with linguistic liaison Vance regarding certain nuances of Earth communication that may have been overlooked." Ambassador Harding stepped forward, clearly about to protest, but Thara raised a slender hand. "This is not a request, Ambassador. Your delegation is dismissed until tomorrow's cycle. Liaison Vance will be returned to you unharmed." The unharmed part did little to reassure Alex, whose mind was still reeling from that whispered finally. As the Earth delegation was escorted out, Harding managed to catch Alex's eye long enough to communicate a mixture of fury, confusion, and something that might have been pity. Then the doors closed, and Alex was alone with Queen Thara, several court attendants, and a handful of royal guards whose exoskeletons had not yet returned to their normal blue hue. "Follow me, Liaison Vance," Thara commanded, already gliding toward a side entrance that Alex hadn't noticed before. His legs moved automatically, following her through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they passed, geometric patterns flowing like liquid across the walls. Alex's brain, meanwhile, was firing in all directions. Had he accidentally activated some sort of archaic Xylosian ritual with his blunder? Was "I love you" an ancient password or challenge? Or was she simply taking him somewhere private to execute him without creating a diplomatic incident? And what in the world did finally mean? They arrived at what appeared to be a private dining chamber. Unlike the formal, almost sterile aesthetic of the command hall, this room was adorned with objects that seemed more personal. Sculptures of abstract forms, displays of what might have been art or scientific specimens, and a large viewport that revealed the stunning vista of the Xylosian homeworld's 3 moons in alignment. "Sit," Thara instructed, gesturing to one of 2 chairs at a table made from the same pearlescent material as everything else in the Xylosian royal palace. Alex obeyed, his throat so dry he didn't think he could speak even if he wanted to. "You are afraid?" Thara observed, taking the seat opposite him. It wasn't a question. Yes, Your Majesty," Alex managed. "I sincerely apologize for my inappropriate outburst. It was a catastrophic mental error, and I understand if your government wishes to file a formal complaint or request my immediate removal from." Thara raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "I am not interested in your rehearsed diplomatic contrition, Liaison Vance." A panel in the table slid open, and a server emerged bearing what appeared to be food and drink. The server placed a crystal decanter containing a luminescent blue liquid and 2 glasses on the table, followed by plates of something. The closest analog Alex could think of was seafood, but it pulsed gently with bioluminescence and seemed to arrange itself into geometric patterns on the plate. "You will consume sustenance with me," Thara stated, "and we will discuss what just occurred with honesty." Alex stared at the gently pulsing food. "I'm not sure if this is compatible with human biology, Your Majesty." For the first time, something like amusement flickered across Thara's features. "It has been adjusted for your physiology. We have been studying human dietary requirements since your species' first contact." That wasn't entirely reassuring, but Alex wasn't in a position to refuse. He watched as Thara poured the blue liquid into both glasses, then lifted hers in what appeared to be a toast. "To unexpected declarations," she said, her star-like eyes fixed on him. Alex hesitantly raised his glass and took a sip. The liquid tasted like nothing he'd ever experienced, somewhere between mint, electricity, and the feeling of jumping into cold water. "Now," Thara set down her glass, "explain to me the true meaning behind your words in the command hall." Alex's mind raced. Should he lie? Tell the truth? What would lead to the least diplomatic fallout? "The truth, Liaison Vance," Thara said, as if reading his thoughts. "I will know if you attempt deception." Alex took a deep breath. "It was an accident, Your Majesty. I was nervous. My mind was wandering between diplomatic phrases and personal thoughts, and the wrong words came out. It was not intended as a statement to you. So you did not mean what you said?" Her tone was impossible to read. "No. Yes. Alex fumbled. "What I mean is, the words weren't meant to be spoken aloud, and they weren't directed at you specifically. It was a catastrophic mental error." Thara studied him for a long moment. "Fascinating. In Xylosian culture, declarations of personal attachment are never made in error. They are calculated, planned, sometimes negotiated between families for years. Well, humans are a bit more impulsive," Alex said weakly. "So I have observed." Thara sampled the food on her plate. "Tell me, on Earth, what does this phrase, 'I love you,' signify precisely?" Our translation matrices suggest it can have multiple interpretations. Alex felt somewhat more comfortable on this linguistic territory. "Well, it's highly context-dependent. It can indicate romantic love, familial love, deep friendship, or even just strong appreciation. The ancient Greeks actually had multiple words for different types of love: eros, philia, storge, agape, but English collapses them all into one word, which can lead to ambiguity." "And which form did your mental error represent?" Thara asked. Alex felt his face heat up again. I was thinking about a message to my partner back on Earth. So, romantic, I suppose." "I see." Thara seemed to consider this. "In your response to my reply?" There it was, the question that had been burning in Alex's mind. "About that. What did you mean by finally?" Before Thara could answer, an alarm sounded, a crystalline chime that resonated throughout the chamber. Thara's posture changed instantly, all traces of the almost casual conversation vanishing as she reverted to her regal bearing. A guard entered, exoskeleton flashing urgent patterns of red and amber. He communicated something to Thara in their native language, too complex and rapid for the translation matrix to process. Thara rose. There's a situation requiring my attention. A malfunction in the central propulsion system of this vessel. Alex blinked in surprise. Vessel? We're on a spaceship. He had assumed they were in a palace on the Xylosian homeworld. This is the Royal Command ship, currently in orbit around our third moon. Thara stated matter-of-factly. Cool me. You will accompany me. Me? But I don't know anything about Xylosian propulsion systems. Alex protested as he hurried to keep pace with her long strides. No, but you represent a different perspective. Sometimes that is valuable. They arrived at what appeared to be an engineering deck. Xylosian technicians moved with controlled urgency around a central holographic display, showing what Alex assumed was the ship's propulsion system. A complex arrangement of structures that seemed to fold into dimensions his mind couldn't quite process. Status report, Thara commanded. A technician with a particularly intricate exoskeleton pattern stepped forward. The quantum fluctuation dampers are experiencing cascading failures, Your Majesty. We've isolated the primary system, but the diagnostic protocols cannot identify the source. Estimated time to critical failure, Thara asked. Approximately 40 minutes at current degradation rates. We are implementing standard containment procedures, but without identifying the cause. Thara turned to Alex, who was still trying to make sense of the holographic display. Observe, Liaison Vance. Does anything appear unusual to you? Alex almost laughed. Everything appeared unusual to him. He was about to say as much when a pattern in the data streams flowing across a secondary display caught his eye. Wait. He moved closer, ignoring the wary looks from the Xylosian technicians. Those fluctuations, they're not random. Explain, Thara commanded. They're following a pattern. See here. Alex pointed to the display. It's cyclical, but not natural. It reminds me of... He paused, feeling slightly ridiculous. Well, it looks like an old Earth computer virus called a logic bomb. It activates, causes damage, then hides itself in the system until the next cycle. The chief technician made a dismissive sound. Human computer systems are primitive compared to our quantum networks. Such a simple intrusion could not. But that's just it, Alex interrupted, then quickly added, apologies for the interruption, but that's exactly why it might work. You never look for something so rudimentary. It's like hiding a wooden arrow among plasma weapons. No one would expect it. Thara studied the display for a moment, then issued a command in Xylosian. The technicians moved with renewed purpose. We will isolate the system and search for this primitive intrusion pattern, she said to Alex. If you are wrong, we lose valuable time. And if I'm right, Thara's star eyes glinted. Then you will have demonstrated unexpected value. 15 tense minutes later, the chief technician approached Thara with what appeared to be reluctant respect. We have found it, Your Majesty. A primitive algorithmic intrusion buried within the tertiary backup systems. It was designed to evade our quantum detection protocols precisely because it does not operate on quantum principles. Origin? Thara asked. Unknown, but definitely not human, the technician clarified with a glance at Alex. The structure suggests Cthar methodology, though this is unusually subtle for their techniques. Alex had heard of the Cthar during security briefings, a militant species with territorial disputes against the Xylos Empire. Not officially at war, but perpetually in a state of high tension. Purge the intrusion and restore the systems, Thara ordered, and increase security protocols on all interfaces. As the technicians hurried to comply, Thara turned to Alex. Your observation was valuable. Unexpected, but valuable. Alex felt a strange mix of pride and confusion. Thank you, Your Majesty, though I'm still not sure why you brought me here in the first place. Thara studied him for a moment, then said simply, sometimes the most predictable quality of humans is their unpredictability. This makes you occasionally useful in ways that calculated logic cannot anticipate. Before Alex could respond to this backhanded compliment, Thara continued, you will temporarily serve as my personal cultural advisor. Your primary function will be to provide alternative perspectives on matters where Xylosian logic might benefit from. Human intuition. What? Your Majesty, I'm just a junior linguistic liaison. I don't have the authority or expertise to. Your authority has been granted by me. Thara cut him off. As for expertise, you have just demonstrated the precise quality I require. The ability to see patterns where our systems do not. Alex opened his mouth to protest further, then closed it. This was so far outside normal diplomatic protocol that he had no idea how to respond. Ambassador Harding would have a coronary. I accept the position, Your Majesty, he finally said, not that he appeared to have much choice in the matter. Excellent, Thara nodded. We will continue our previous discussion at a later time. For now, you will be assigned quarters in the royal sector and provided with appropriate access credentials. And just like that, Alex Vance, junior linguistic liaison, accidental utterer of inappropriate declarations, and now apparently personal advisor to the queen of the most powerful empire in the known galaxy, found himself being escorted to royal quarters that were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. As the door sealed behind him, he sank onto a cushioned surface that adjusted perfectly to his body's contours and whispered to himself, "What the hell just happened?" 2 weeks into his unexpected new role, Alex was still asking himself that question daily. His duties as Tharia's cultural advisor were as unpredictable as the circumstances that had landed him in the position. Some days, he simply observed Xylosian court proceedings, making notes on human interpretations of their customs and occasionally offering perspective when asked. Other days, he accompanied Thara to strategic meetings where tension with the Kthar seemed to be escalating rapidly. According to intelligence reports, Kthar vessels have been spotted with increasing frequency near Xylosian outposts. The propulsion system's sabotage attempt appeared to be just the opening move in what some of Tharia's military advisors feared was building toward a more direct confrontation. Today, Alex sat in on a war council, feeling distinctly out of place among the Xylosian military elite. Their exoskeletons, adorned with what he now understood were military honors and rank designations, made even the highest-ranking Earth military officers look like children playing dress-up. The Kthar fleet movements suggest they are preparing for a strike against the Helios outpost, stated Admiral Kfor, the Xylosian fleet commander. Their new Sunbreaker-class warships have been observed testing weapons platforms within range of our defensive grid. Thara, seated at the head of the council table, remained impassive. Their intentions remain unclear. Kthar tactics historically favor intimidation displays before actual aggression. With respect, Your Majesty, countered another military advisor. These movements exceed typical intimidation patterns. The sabotage attempt against your personal vessel suggests a new level of strategic escalation. Thara's star eyes flicked briefly to Alex. Cultural advisor Vance, what perspective can Earth history offer on this situation? Every head turned toward Alex, who straightened involuntarily. He had been briefed on the situation, but hadn't expected to be called upon so directly. Well, he began cautiously, it reminds me of certain historical patterns from Earth's Cold War era. Sometimes, what appeared to be preparation for attack was actually a calculated risk to force diplomatic concessions. The Kthar might be trying to strengthen their position for future negotiations rather than preparing for immediate warfare. Admiral Kfor made a sound that the translation matrix interpreted as skeptical. The Kthar do not negotiate. They demand, they take, or they destroy. Perhaps traditionally, Alex acknowledged. But every culture evolves. Earth nations once considered implacable enemies now maintain peaceful trade relations. What if the Kthar leadership is using these aggressive postures to satisfy internal military factions while actually seeking a path to de-escalation? The council chamber fell silent, the Xylosian military leadership exchanging glances that Alex couldn't interpret. An interesting hypothesis, Thara finally said. What would you suggest as a response, based on Earth diplomatic history? Alex thought carefully. A two-pronged approach. Publicly, maintain a strong defensive posture. Show that you're not intimidated and are prepared to respond if necessary. But simultaneously, open a quiet, unofficial communication channel. Perhaps through a neutral third party. Offer something the Kthar value that costs you relatively little, as a good faith first step. Weakness, growled one of the military commanders. The Kthar would interpret such overtures as fear. Not if the public stance remains firm, Alex countered. On Earth, we called it speaking softly and carrying a big stick. The key is that both elements must be present. The diplomatic outreach and the clear ability and willingness to defend if necessary. Sthara studied him for a long moment, those cosmic eyes revealing nothing of her thoughts. Thank you, Cultural Advisor Vance. Your perspective will be considered. The meeting continued, shifting to technical discussions of fleet deployments and defense systems that went well beyond Alex's understanding. But he noticed that Sthara occasionally glanced in his direction, as if weighing his words against the military counsel she was receiving. After the council adjourned, Sthara motioned for Alex to remain behind. When they were alone in the chamber, she turned to him fully. You speak of Earth history, but Earth has never faced an adversary like the Kthar. Their neural structure makes them fundamentally different from humans or Xylosians. They interpret actions through a collective consciousness that prioritizes dominance above all else. All sentient species have some core needs and fears, Alex replied. Even with different neural structures, there must be points of potential understanding. Sthara tilted her head slightly. Your species' optimism is either its greatest strength or its most dangerous weakness. I have not yet determined which. Maybe it's both. Alex smiled faintly. But it's gotten us this far. Something shifted in Sthara's demeanor. A subtle relaxation of her perpetually perfect posture. Walk with me, Advisor Vance. She led him through corridors he hadn't seen before, eventually arriving at what appeared to be a private garden. Unlike the geometric precision of most Xylosian spaces, this one contained plants of varying shapes and colors, growing with what seemed like deliberate wildness. The artificial gravity and atmosphere controls had been adjusted to create gentle breezes that carried sweet, unfamiliar scents. My personal sanctuary, Sthara explained. Few are permitted entry. Alex took in the alien foliage with wonder. Some plants seemed to respond to their presence, turning luminescent fronds toward them or changing color as they passed. It's beautiful. Beauty is one concept that seems to translate across species, despite differing sensory organs, Sthara observed. She gestured toward a curved bench overlooking a pool of what appeared to be liquid silver. Sit. We have never properly finished our initial conversation. Alex felt a flutter of nervousness as he sat beside her, remembering the circumstances that had led to his current position. About my unfortunate choice of words that day. Yes, Sthara turned those star-filled eyes on him. You claimed they were spoken in error, meant for someone else. They were, Alex confirmed, then hesitated. But I'm still confused by your response. What did you mean by finally? Sthara was silent for a moment, her gaze turning to the reflective pool. Xylosians live considerably longer than humans. I have ruled the Empire for over 2 centuries of your Earth time. In that period, I have been approached with countless offers of strategic alliances, marriages of political convenience, and partnerships based on calculated advantage. She turned back to Alex. What I have never encountered from any species is a spontaneous declaration of genuine emotional attachment, particularly not from someone with so little to gain and so much to lose by such a declaration. But it was an accident, Alex reminded her. The fact that it was accidental made it authentic, Sthara said. And authenticity is rare enough to be valuable. Finally, I thought, something unexpected. Alex wasn't quite sure how to respond to that. So, you're not offended? Offended. If Xylosians could laugh, the sound Sthara made might have been the equivalent. No, Advisor Vance. I am intrigued. You humans are constant sources of unpredictability. Most Xylosians find this troubling. I find it. She seemed to search for the right word. Refreshing. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the soft sounds of the garden. Alex found himself studying Sthara's profile, noticing for the first time how the light played across the contours of her face, creating patterns that seemed like constellations unto themselves. May I ask a personal question, Your Majesty? Sthara inclined her head slightly, which Alex had learned was the Xylosian equivalent of proceed. Do Xylosians have anything like what humans would call love? Not just political alliances or reproductive arrangements, but emotional connection. Thara considered this carefully. We have a concept called Kazurith, which your translation matrix might approximate as resonance of purpose. It is when two Xylosians find their life patterns harmonizing in ways that amplify both. It is rare and highly valued. That sounds beautiful, actually, Alex said. Not unlike certain human concepts of deep connection. Perhaps, Thar acknowledged, though I suspect human love is more chaotic and less calculated than Kazareth. Oh, definitely, Alex laughed softly. Love makes humans do completely irrational things. Write poetry, cross oceans, give up careers, accidentally blurt declarations to alien queens. For the first time, Thar's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Indeed, the moment was interrupted by a sudden, blaring alarm. Not the subtle chime of the previous engineering emergency, but a harsh, penetrating sound that instantly puts Thara on alert. Security breach, she stated, already rising and moving toward a communication panel that appeared in what had previously seemed to be solid wall. She issued rapid commands in Xylosian, her entire demeanor shifting back to regal authority. What's happening? Alex asked, anxiety mounting. Thar infiltration team, Thara replied tersely as she studied information on the display. They've breached the outer security perimeter of this vessel. She turned to Alex. You must return to your quarters immediately. Security protocols dictate. The lights throughout the garden flickered, then dimmed to emergency levels. The communication panels Thara had been using went dark. They've accessed the primary power grid. Thara's voice remained calm, but Alex detected an edge of tension. This is not a typical Thar tactic. They favor direct confrontation, not stealth. Unless their objective isn't conventional victory, Alex suggested. What if this is an assassination attempt? Targeting you specifically? Thar's eyes flared. My personal guard would. Have. Another alarm sounded, this one different in tone. The royal guard chambers have been compromised, Thara confirmed, her suspicion now evident. You may be correct, Advisor Vance. Alex's mind raced. If they've infiltrated this far, they must have inside help or detailed knowledge of the ship's security systems. Agreed. Standard evacuation routes will likely be compromised. Thara moved to another section of the garden wall, placing her palm against it. A hidden panel slid open, revealing what appeared to be weapons. She selected something that resembled a sleek, elongated pistol. Can you operate defensive weaponry, Advisor? I had basic security training before joining the diplomatic corps, but nothing with... He gestured at the alien device. Whatever that is, Thara selected a simpler-looking device. This requires minimal training. Point and activate. It will emit a neural disruptor field effective against Cthar nervous systems. Alex took the weapon gingerly. Where are we going? This garden connects to a maintenance passage that leads to the emergency command center, Thara explained, already moving toward a concealed door behind a curtain of luminescent vines. It is known only to the monarch and the chief of royal security, who might be compromised. Alex pointed out the uncomfortable possibility. Hence why we proceed with caution, Thara agreed. They moved swiftly through the hidden passage, a narrow corridor bathed in low blue emergency lighting. Alex tried to keep track of the turns and intersections, but the ship's layout was too complex for him to mentally map. He focused instead on staying close to Thara, who moved with silent grace despite the urgency of their situation. How many Cthar do you think are aboard? Alex whispered. Cthar infiltration teams typically consist of 5 to 7 operatives, Thara replied softly. Highly trained, neurally linked to function as a single organism during combat. Great, Alex muttered. And we're 2 people with hand weapons. I'm not merely people, Advisor Vance, Thara said, a hint of what might have been humor in her voice. I'm the 73rd monarch of the Xylos Empire, trained in 15 forms of combat and neurally linked to this vessel's core systems. When not blocked by sabotage, that is. Of course. Sorry, Your Majesty. They reached a junction where the passage split into three directions. Thara paused, her head tilting slightly as if listening to something Alex couldn't hear. "What is it?" he asked. "The neural link is partially reestablishing. The emergency systems are activating countermeasures against the intrusion." She pointed to the rightmost passage. "This way. The backup command center is 2 levels down." As they turned into the new corridor, Alex heard something, a faint scraping sound from behind them. He glanced back, but saw nothing in the dim blue light. Thara had heard it too. "Move quickly," she whispered. "We are being tracked." They increased their pace, the corridor gradually sloping downward. Alex's diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for this kind of physical exertion, and he found himself breathing heavily as they descended. The corridor ended at what appeared to be a dead end, but Thara placed her palm against it, and a seam appeared in the seemingly solid wall. It began to slide open, agonizingly slowly compared to the usual instant response of Xylosian technology. "Emergency power only," Thara explained. "Hurry through as soon as there's space." The opening had widened to maybe 30 centimeters when the scraping sound behind them grew suddenly louder. Alex turned to see movement in the shadows, something low to the ground, moving with unsettling fluidity. "They're here," he warned, raising the neural disruptor. "Wait," Thara commanded. "Our infiltrators would move more directly. This is something else." From the shadows emerged not the dreaded Cthar assassins, but what appeared to be a small maintenance drone. Its normally smooth glide was compromised, causing the scraping sound they'd heard as it dragged one damaged appendage. "A royal maintenance unit," Thara identified it. "Part of my personal security network." The drone approached, projecting a small holographic message. The symbols were in Xylosian, unintelligible to Alex, but Thara absorbed them quickly. "The Cthar have seized the main bridge," she translated. "They are attempting to override the ship's navigation systems. Their objective appears to be to crash this vessel into the Xylosian defense headquarters on the third moon." A decapitation strike, Alex realized. Take out both you and the military command with one attack. The door had opened just wide enough for them to slip through sideways. Thara went first, her slender form passing through easily. Alex followed, squeezing through the narrow opening and finding himself in what appeared to be a smaller, more austere version of the main command hall. "The emergency command center," Thara confirmed, moving immediately to a central console that illuminated at her touch. "From here, we can override the Cthar intrusion, if we act quickly enough." Alex watched as Thara's hands moved across the controls with practiced precision, holographic displays materializing and dissolving around her. The data streams were too complex and alien for him to follow, but the tension in Thara's posture told him enough about the severity of their situation. "Status?" he asked, keeping his voice low as if the Cthar might somehow hear them through the ship's walls. "The infiltration team has fragmented. 4 operatives on the main bridge, 2 securing the primary power core, and at least 1 tracking our movement through the maintenance corridors." Thara's eyes narrowed at the displays. "They're attempting to override the navigational locks. Estimated time to success, 12 minutes. And then they crash us into the moon base," Alex concluded. "Can you stop them from here? I can initiate emergency protocols to lock down critical systems, but the Cthar have implanted advanced blocking algorithms." They anticipated this response. Thara's voice remained calm, but Alex could sense her frustration. "I need to purge their intrusion program from the core systems first." She worked in silence for several moments, the only sound in the chamber the soft hum of emergency power and Alex's still elevated breathing. "There's a problem," Thara finally said. "The Cthar have implemented a neural response verification system. Any command attempt from this terminal is being blocked by a pattern recognition filter calibrated to Xylosian neural signatures." Alex frowned. "They're basically saying no Xylosians allowed." "A crude but accurate assessment," Thara agreed. "They have specifically designed this intrusion to counter Xylosian response patterns." A thought struck Alex. What about human patterns? If their filter is calibrated for Xylosian neural signatures, would it recognize or block human commands? Thara turned those cosmic eyes on him, something like surprise flickering in their depths. Unknown. The Cthar may not have accounted for human neural patterns in their blocking algorithm. However, you're not trained in Xylosian command interfaces. Maybe not, Alex admitted, but I'm a quick study, and we're running out of options. What exactly needs to be done? Sthara hesitated only momentarily before gesturing him forward. The primary task is to execute a systematic purge of external control parameters while maintaining core life support functions. The interface is designed for Xylosian neural haptic interaction, but can be operated manually. She guided Alex to the main console, positioning his hands over what appeared to be a fluid, constantly shifting control surface. Focus your thoughts on the concept of isolation while moving your hands through these motion sequences. What followed was perhaps the most intense crash course in alien technology that any human had ever experienced. Sthara rapidly explained the fundamentals of Xylosian command architecture, translating complex concepts into analogies Alex could grasp. Think of it as separating oil from water, she instructed as Alex attempted to mentally parse the data streams flowing across the display. Visualize the Cthar code as a contaminant that must be contained and then extracted. Alex's linguistic training proved unexpectedly useful as he began to recognize patterns in what had initially appeared as chaotic information. The Cthar intrusion code had a distinct syntax that separated it from native Xylosian programming, more angular, more aggressive in how it propagated through systems. "I think I see it," he murmured, his hands moving more confidently across the interface. It's almost like it's speaking a different dialect. There and there. Sthara observed his progress with what might have been approval. "Your pattern recognition is functioning correctly. Now you must isolate these intrusions while I prepare the purge sequence." They worked in tandem, Sthara guiding while Alex executed the commands, his human neural patterns apparently bypassing the Cthar filters. It was exhausting, mentally taxing work, requiring a level of concentration Alex had never before had to maintain. One final sequence, Sthara instructed after what felt like hours, but had likely been less than 10 minutes. "We must synchronize the purge across all affected systems simultaneously." Alex nodded, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air of the command center. "Ready when you are." Sthara placed her hands beside his on the console, their fingers almost touching. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Execute." Alex completed the final command sequence just as a violent shudder ran through the ship. The lights flickered, plunging them into darkness for a heart-stopping moment before emergency power reasserted itself. "Did it work?" he asked, his voice sounding strained even to his own ears. The display before them slowly reformed, data streams now flowing in organized patterns. "Primary systems purged," Sthara confirmed. "The Cthar intrusion has been isolated and contained." She turned to Alex, and for the first time, he saw something like genuine respect in her cosmic gaze. "Your assistance was crucial. What about the infiltration team?" Alex asked, suddenly remembering they were still dealing with physical intruders. "Without control of the ship's systems, their primary mission has failed," Sthara said, already accessing what appeared to be security protocols. "They will now attempt extraction or, failing that, maximum damage before capture or elimination." As if summoned by her words, a new alarm sounded, this one pulsing with a rapid, urgent rhythm. "They have detonated explosives in the primary life support hub," Sthara reported, her voice tightening. "Atmospheric integrity compromised in sectors 7 through 12. Alex felt a chill run through him. "How many people are in those sectors?" 217 crew members, Sthara answered grimly. "Emergency protocols are activating, but damage is severe. They will not be sufficient." Another alert sounded, this one accompanied by a flashing red glyph that even Alex recognized as urgent. Sthara's posture went rigid. "The Cthar team is heading this way," she stated, drawing her weapon. "They have determined our location and are attempting to complete their secondary objective." "Which is?" Alex asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "My assassination," Sthara confirmed, her tone matter of fact. Stand ready, Advisor Vance. They will breach that entrance within minutes. Alex gripped his neural disruptor, a surge of adrenaline pushing aside his previous exhaustion. What's the plan? Thara accessed a schematic of the surrounding area. This command center has one additional exit, a maintenance shaft that leads to the Royal escape pods. However, using it would mean abandoning the crew members in the compromised sectors. She didn't need to explain the implied dilemma. Royal protocol would dictate that Thara's safety took priority, the Monarch's survival outweighing even hundreds of crew members. But Alex could see in her posture that she was reluctant to follow that protocol. There has to be a way to do both, Alex insisted, studying the schematics over her shoulder. What if you took the escape route to reach a section of the ship where you could regain full control, while I stayed here to buy time and try to reroute emergency life support? Thara turned those cosmic eyes on him fully. You would be sacrificing yourself almost certainly. Not necessarily, Alex countered. I just need to lock down this terminal after you leave, hold off the Kthar team as long as possible, then follow you through the maintenance shaft. It's a calculated risk. Something flickered in Thara's expression, surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. You continue to defy Xylosian predictive models of human behavior, Advisor Vance. That's our specialty. Alex managed a tense smile. Being unpredictable. A dull thud echoed from the main entrance. The first attempt by the Kthar team to breach the sealed door. We have no more time for debate, Thara stated. Your plan has merit, but I am adjusting it. I will remain to hold off the infiltration team. You will take the maintenance shaft to auxiliary control in Sector 5 and execute the life support rerouting from there. The schematics and command sequences will be transferred to this. She removed what appeared to be a crystalline bracelet from her wrist and placed it on Alex's. It adjusted automatically to his size, the interior surface lighting up with Xylosian script that somehow, miraculously, he could now partially comprehend. But Alex began to protest. This is not a negotiation, Advisor Vance, Thara cut him off. The fate of my crew takes priority over protocol, and you now possess the necessary understanding of our systems to execute the rerouting successfully. Another louder impact shook the door. Hairline fractures appeared in its seemingly impenetrable surface. Go, Thara commanded, positioning herself strategically with a clear line of fire to the entrance. That is a direct order from your queen. Something in her tone, the use of your queen rather than the more formal Her Majesty, struck Alex deeply. He found himself responding almost automatically, yes, Your Majesty, even as his mind rebelled against leaving her to face the Kthar alone. Thara moved swiftly to a section of wall that slid open at her touch, revealing the narrow maintenance shaft. The auxiliary control center is approximately 300 meters along this passage, then 2 levels up. The access code is embedded in the bracelet. Alex hesitated at the entrance to the shaft, looking back at Thara. Her tall, elegant form stood resolute, weapon ready, facing the increasingly damaged entrance door with regal composure. Thara, he said, dropping protocol in the moment's urgency. I'll come back for you. I promise. Those star-filled eyes met his for a brief, intense moment. Focus on the mission, Alex. Save my people. It was the first time she had used his first name. The impact of that simple act wasn't lost on him. The door to the command center buckled inward with a screech of protesting materials. Thara raised her weapon. Go, she commanded one final time. Alex plunged into the maintenance shaft, the entrance sealing behind him just as he heard the distinctive sound of energy weapons discharging in the command center. The maintenance shaft was barely large enough for his human frame, forcing Alex to move in an awkward crouch crawl. The bracelets Thara had given him emitted a soft blue glow, illuminating the way forward and occasionally pulsing brighter when he needed to make a turn. His mind raced with worry for Thara, but he forced himself to focus on the mission. The schematics embedded in the bracelet showed him that the 200-plus crew members in the damaged sectors were rapidly running out of breathable atmosphere. Their only hope was for him to reach the auxiliary control center and execute the emergency rerouting of life support. The shaft seemed endless, each meter a struggle in the confined space. Just when Alex thought his cramping legs couldn't take any more, the passage opened into a vertical shaft with ladder rungs embedded in the wall. According to the bracelet's guidance, he needed to climb up 2 levels. He ascended as quickly as his exhausted body would allow, painfully aware that each second could mean another crew member lost. Finally reaching the designated level, he followed the bracelet's guidance through another horizontal section of maintenance shaft before arriving at what appeared to be a dead end. The bracelet pulsed rapidly, and Alex pressed his palm against the wall as he'd seen Thara do. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, recognizing either the bracelet's signal or perhaps something in his human biological signature, the barrier slid aside to reveal a small, utilitarian control room. Unlike the elegant, organic interfaces of the main command centers, this auxiliary station was clearly designed for emergency situations. More direct, more mechanical. Alex moved immediately to the main console, the bracelet projecting guidance holograms to help him navigate the unfamiliar controls. Life support rerouting, he muttered to himself, searching through the systems. There, he found the atmospheric control protocols and began the emergency rerouting sequence, his fingers flying across the interface with a confidence he wouldn't have believed possible 2 weeks ago. The bracelet provided translations and guidance, but he was surprised to find he understood more of the Xylosian command language than he'd realized. His time with Thara had taught him more than he knew. A progress indicator showed the rerouting taking effect. Emergency atmospheric generators activating. Undamaged sections sharing oxygen with the compromised areas. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would buy the trapped crew members enough time to either repair the damage or evacuate to safer sections. As the rerouting completed successfully, Alex allowed himself a moment of relief before the next urgent priority asserted itself in his mind. Thara. He accessed the security systems, searching for any information about the situation in the emergency command center. What he found chilled him to the core. The command center's internal sensors showed massive energy discharge readings consistent with an intense firefight, followed by life sign readings dropping precipitously. Now, there were only 2 life signatures registering, one Xylosian, one Cthar, both showing signs of critical injury. Thara was still alive, but barely, and at least one Cthar assassin had survived as well. Without consciously deciding to do so, Alex found himself downloading the ship's security protocols to the bracelet and plotting the fastest route back to the emergency command center. The rational part of his mind advised caution. Thara had ordered him to prioritize the crew, and he had accomplished that mission. The sensible thing would be to contact Xylosian security forces and let them handle the situation. But something deeper, something far less rational, drove him to access the auxiliary armory locker in the control room. Select a weapon that the bracelet identified as effective against Cthar physiology and head back into the maintenance shaft. I promised I'd come back for you, he whispered, as if Thara could somehow hear him. And humans try to keep their promises, especially to their queen. The return journey through the maintenance shafts seemed both eternal and instant, time stretching and compressing under the pressure of urgency. By the time Alex reached the access point near the emergency command center, his diplomatic training felt like something from another lifetime, a quaint memory of a person he no longer was. The bracelet guided him to a secondary entrance to the command center, an access panel designed for maintenance drones. It was small, but just large enough for a human to squeeze through if they were determined enough. And Alex was nothing if not determined. He paused at the entrance, checking the bracelet's life sign readings one more time. Still 2 signatures, the Xylosian one weaker now, the Cthar one also deteriorating but more slowly. He had to act fast. Weapon ready, Alex triggered the access panel and slipped into the devastated command center. The scene that greeted him was one of destruction beyond anything he had imagined. Consoles shattered, walls scorched by energy weapons, and the unmistakable iridescent fluid that served as Xylosian blood spattering several surfaces. In the center of the room, Thara lay propped against a damaged console, her elegant form now marred by severe injuries. Her exoskeleton was cracked in multiple places, leaking that same iridescent fluid, and one of her arms appeared to be completely non-functional. Yet she still clutched her weapon, aimed steadily at the equally damaged Kthar assassin who crouched about 10 meters away. The Kthar was a nightmarish sight, a predatory, insectoid being with multiple limbs and a carapace of deep crimson. Several of its limbs had been severed or damaged, and a viscous black substance oozed from multiple wounds. Its compound eyes fixed on Sthara with murderous intent, apparently not yet having noticed Alex's entrance. "Your death comes soon, Queen of Xylos," the Kthar hissed in a voice that sounded like gravel being crushed. "And with it, the first step in your empire's downfall." "The Xylos Empire has stood for 10,000 years, Sthara replied, her voice weaker than Alex had ever heard it, but still commanding. "It will not fall to the likes of you." The Kthar tensed, clearly preparing for a final lunge at Sthara despite its injuries. It was now or never. Alex stepped fully into the room, his weapon raised. "Don't move," he shouted. Both Sthara and the Kthar assassin turned toward him with equally shocked expressions. Though on the Kthar, shock looked like a rippling of its facial mandibles that would haunt Alex's nightmares if he survived this encounter. "A human?" the Kthar rasped, compound eyes gleaming with confusion and rage. This was not in the intelligence briefing. "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises," Alex replied, trying to project a confidence he didn't entirely feel as he kept his weapon trained on the assassin. "Step away from the queen." Now, the Kthar seemed to calculate its options, gaze shifting between Alex, Sthara, and the possible escape routes. "Your species is not part of this conflict," it finally said. "Stand aside, and you may yet live to return to your Earth." "Not happening," Alex stated firmly, moving carefully to position himself between the Kthar and Sthara. "The queen is under my protection." The Kthar made a sound that might have been laughter, a dry, chittering noise. "A human protecting the Queen of Xylos? Has the mighty empire fallen so far already?" "No," Sthara spoke from behind Alex, her voice stronger now despite her injuries. "It has found new strength in unexpected places." The Kthar's compound eyes narrowed, its posture shifting subtly. Alex recognized the preparation for attack just moments before it happened, a slight tensing of its remaining functional limbs. "Alex down," Sthara called. Alex dropped instantly as the Kthar launched itself toward them with shocking speed. He fired his weapon as he fell, the energy beam catching the assassin mid-leap, but not before it had released something from one of its limbs, a small, spinning projectile that flew over Alex's head towards Sthara. There was no time to think, only react. Alex twisted and lunged backward, his hand shooting up to intercept the projectile before it could reach Sthara. He caught it. A mistake, he realized immediately as pain like liquid fire shot up his arm. The device, whatever it was, had embedded itself partially in his palm, injecting something into his system that burned through his veins with terrifying speed. The Kthar, meanwhile, crashed to the floor beside them, Alex's shot having finally stopped its attack. It twitched once, twice, and then went still, compound eyes dimming to a dull, lifeless sheen. "Alex!" Sthara's voice seemed to come from very far away, though she was right beside him. "The toxin device, you must release it." Alex tried to comply, but his fingers wouldn't respond. The burning sensation had traveled up his arm and was now spreading across his chest. His vision began to blur, the command center's emergency lights creating halos and streaks across his field of view. Through the gathering fog in his mind, he was aware of Sthara moving beside him, her injured form somehow finding the strength to prop him up, her functioning arm reaching for the device still embedded in his hand. "Hold on," her voice commanded, though it seemed to echo strangely now. "The Kthar venom is designed for Xylosian physiology. Your human biology may respond differently. I can extract the device, but I must trigger the emergency medical protocols first." Alex tried to focus on her star-filled eyes, finding them now the only clear point in his increasingly chaotic perception. "Did we win?" he managed to ask, his voice sounding distant and unfamiliar to his own ears. Yes, Thara's face came closer, those cosmic eyes filling his narrowing field of vision. The crew is safe. The Cthar have failed. And you, Alex Vance, have proven yourself far more than a linguistic liaison. Good, Alex murmured, the burning sensation now giving way to an odd, spreading numbness. That's good. The last thing he was aware of before consciousness slipped away was the sensation of Thara's touch against his face. Cool, gentle, and somehow conveying more emotion than he would have thought possible from the once-distant queen of the Xylos Empire. Alex woke to the soft hum of medical equipment and the sensation of being suspended in a field of gentle pressure. He opened his eyes slowly, finding himself in what appeared to be a medical pod filled with a translucent, slightly viscous fluid that somehow allowed him to breathe normally. Beyond the curved surface of the pod, he could make out a medical bay of clearly Xylosian design, elegant, organic shapes housing technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. And standing beside the pod, her tall form instantly recognizable despite the blurring effect of the medical fluid, was Queen Thara. She looked different. Her injuries had been treated, though faint lines in her exoskeleton showed where repairs had been made. But it was more than that. Her posture seemed less rigidly formal, and she wore what appeared to be simpler attire than her usual royal regalia, still elegant, but less ceremonial. When she saw that his eyes were open, she placed a slender hand against the surface of the pod. The medical fluid began to drain immediately, and the top portion of the pod retracted, allowing Alex to sit up. "How long was I out?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. 3 Earth days, Thara replied. The Cthar toxin proved challenging to neutralize in human physiology. Our medical specialists had to develop a specific counteragent. Alex flexed his right hand, the one that had caught the toxin device. It felt normal, with no sign of injury or even a scar. "Impressive medicine you have here." "Indeed," Thara agreed, though your own species' remarkable adaptability played a significant role. The medical chief was quite fascinated by how your immune system attempted to isolate and combat the unknown compound. Alex swung his legs over the edge of the pod, pleased to find that apart from a slight weakness, he felt relatively normal. "What happened while I was out?" "The Cthar have retreated beyond the Helios boundary," Thara informed him. "Their assassination attempt failed, their sabotage was overcome, and they lost some of their most elite operatives. It represents a significant setback to their strategic position." She moved to a nearby console, retrieving what appeared to be a folded set of clothing. "These have been adapted for human comfort while maintaining appropriate status indicators." Alex accepted the clothing, a tunic and pants in a deep blue similar to his diplomatic uniform, but with subtle Xylosian design elements and what appeared to be small rank insignia. "Status indicators?" he questioned. "Yes," Thara confirmed. "Your actions have earned you a new designation. The Council of High Advisors has created a special position, Interspecies Strategic Liaison. You will serve directly as my advisor on human and other non-Xylosian perspectives, with diplomatic rank equivalent to a second-tier Imperial Counselor." Alex blinked in surprise. "That sounds significant." "It is unprecedented," Thara acknowledged. "No non-Xylosian has ever held such a position. There was considerable debate in the Council. But your actions during the Cthar attack, saving the crew, returning to aid me despite clear orders to prioritize your own safety, and directly confronting an elite Cthar assassin, these could not be dismissed." Alex wasn't entirely sure how to respond to this unexpected honor. "I'm grateful, Your Majesty, though I'm not sure the Earth Coalition was prepared to loan me out for an extended diplomatic position with the Xylos Empire." Something like amusement flickered in Thara's cosmic eyes. Ambassador Harding expressed similar concerns. However, he was persuaded by the significant improvements to the mining rights agreement that accompanied your new appointment. The Earth Coalition now has access to 28% of extracted minerals, rather than the 15 initially offered. "That's quite a concession," Alex observed, recognizing the political masterstroke. By tying his appointment to tangible benefits for Earth, Sthara had effectively neutralized any objections from his home government. A fair exchange, Sthara stated simply. Your unique perspective has proven valuable to the Empire. It is logical to formalize that value. Alex found himself smiling. Is that the only reason, Your Majesty? Sthara tilted her head slightly, those star-filled eyes studying him with an intensity that once would have made him uncomfortable but now felt almost familiar. No, she admitted after a moment. It is not the only reason. She moved closer to the medical pod, her tall form towering over him even while he was seated on its edge. Your unexpected declaration in the command hall continues to intrigue me, Alex Vance. As does your equally unexpected return to the emergency command center despite my direct order to prioritize the crew. I did prioritize the crew, Alex pointed out. I completed the life support rerouting before coming back for you. Precisely, Sthara nodded. You found a way to fulfill the objective while also following your own imperative. Most Xylosians would have seen these as mutually exclusive choices. You perceived a third option. This pattern of thinking has proven consistently valuable. She paused, then added more quietly, and personally significant. Alex felt his heart rate increase slightly. Personally significant, yes. Sthara extended a hand, not to touch him, but in a formal gesture he had come to recognize as a Xylosian invitation to rise to equal standing. In 2 centuries of rule, I have never encountered anyone, Xylosian or otherwise, who has challenged my preconceptions so consistently, or who has demonstrated such unpremeditated loyalty. Alex accepted the gesture, standing somewhat unsteadily at first. Even at his full height, Sthara still towered over him, but somehow the difference felt less important than it once had. In human terms, he ventured, that almost sounds like you're saying you like having me around. An imprecise but not entirely inaccurate translation, Sthara acknowledged, and Alex could have sworn he saw the faintest curve of her lips, the closest thing to a smile he had yet witnessed from her. The concept of Kazareth I mentioned before, the resonance of purpose, it seems applicable to our interactions. Resonance of purpose, Alex repeated thoughtfully. I like that. Though humans might add that sometimes the most meaningful resonances are the unexpected ones. The ones that surprise you. Like accidentally declaring love to an alien queen. Sthara suggested, that almost smile becoming slightly more pronounced. Exactly like that, Alex agreed, finding the courage to smile fully in return. Though I'm still not entirely sure what you meant by finally. Sthara's star eyes seemed to glimmer with something new, a warmth he hadn't seen before. Perhaps, interspecies strategic liaison, Vance. That is something we will explore as part of your new duties. I look forward to it, Alex replied, and was surprised to realize just how deeply he meant it. Your Majesty. Sthara regarded him for a long moment, then said softly, when we are not in formal settings, you may call me Sthara. It was a small thing, perhaps, by human standards. But Alex understood enough of Xylosian protocol now to recognize the profound significance of such permission. And you can call me Alex, he offered in return, when we're not in formal settings. Alex, she repeated, the name sounding exotic and yet somehow right in her melodic voice. I believe this marks the beginning of a most unusual diplomatic arrangement. The best ones usually are, Alex replied with a grin. After all, predictability is overrated. As he stood there in the medical bay of a Xylosian royal vessel, facing an alien queen who had somehow become something more than just a diplomatic assignment, Alex Vance, former junior linguistic liaison, accidental utterer of inappropriate declarations, and now unprecedented interspecies strategic liaison, felt a certainty he couldn't quite explain. Whatever came next would undoubtedly be complicated, probably dangerous, and almost certainly beyond anything his diplomatic training had prepared him for. But looking into his Sthara-esque cosmic eyes, he found he wouldn't have it any other way. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he made a note to thank whatever cosmic coincidence had caused him to blurt out, I love you, in that command hall all those weeks ago. Some mistakes, it seemed, were worth making.